Joe, I want to thank you for that kind introduction. It's moments like those you wish your parents were here, because you know your mother would be proud and your father would be amazed. Yes, how true. You obviously have the same kind of parents, Joe. Some middle child of 3 boys. My parents spent many a night awake wondering what was going to happen to their middle child. They're still shocked that any president would ever listen to his advice. I want to thank the sheet metal workers for picking Chicago to have your international convention. I know it's on a rotating basis, and I can think of personally, this is the first labor movement and labor organization I'm speaking to since being elected mayor, and I want to thank you very much for being here. Well, obviously the city's hosting, as you know, Rocco and the others from the Chicago greater area walked me up, and I would not be here. Obviously, I love the sheet metal workers, but just want you to know I love Rocco more. So Rocco has been a stalwart and a good friend and somebody who's been unbelievably loyal and told me exactly what he could and could not do, and he's a man of his word, and that's what I like in politics. Tells you what it's like, tells you what he can and can't do, and delivers like that. And so to the entire sheet metal workers, I want to thank you for having that type of leadership. I also want to talk about 2 things. Because Joe, I was listening to your speech a little beforehand. These are challenging times. It's self-evident if I say that. For all of us who work in both the public sector as well as dealing with middle-class families as they try to make ends meet. I believe in government. Not as an end in itself, but as a means to helping middle-class family achieve an end in itself, and that is a middle-class life for them and for their children to do something greater. And if you have a progressive vision of government, that is an affirmative view where government can serve a good role. These are challenging times to define a path different than what was done in Wisconsin, different than what was done in Ohio, different than what's being done in states after states. And it means working together as partners in finding common ground and solutions to difficult problems. And I say that here because I now have a challenge to deal with the budget. I've asked labor to be a partner in helping solve closing a $652 million deficit. Not counting the schools is at $710 million. So I need labor to be that partner in finding creative solutions to do things differently. Just yesterday, I wrote a piece in the Tribune because organized labor in the city of Chicago put forward $250 million, they say, of savings. We're going over those savings. But the most promising thing that they had in there was the notion of managed competition. And but why I say that is that they say and they believe that they can compete rather than outsourcing the work, insource it. And if it's competitive on a price basis, that work will be insourced. My view is the challenge is to make sure that the city's taxpayers are well represented, and that is to be a voice for the taxpayers. This is not about the city's payroll, as it has in the past sometimes in the city of Chicago, but it's about the city's taxpayers and making sure they're getting a fair deal for their tax dollars. And if we make those type of tough decisions and those reforms, people will once again see government that is dealing with education, dealing with healthcare, dealing with transportation, dealing with retirement security, as somebody that's on their side rather than something that's working against them. And that's essential if you have, as I've proven over not only working for President Obama, but President Clinton, but also representing the north side of the city of Chicago, a progressive vision of government. Now, in this last session of the Springfield legislature, I went and got passed something that had never been passed before, which is a Chicago-owned casino bill. And I pledged that the revenue from that casino will all be used for infrastructure, for building our roads, our bridges, our highways, our water system. It will be the largest expansion of infrastructure, the largest one-time expansion of revenue for infrastructure by the city of Chicago in its history, to do its mass transit and its buses and its CTA, and that is its rail system, its water system, its road system, its school construction, the largest infrastructure expenditure by the Chicago history in both absolute dollar terms ever done in the last 40 or 50 years. Because I believe it's essential to invest in our city and put those resources into our city's future. I will not use that revenue to do anything but build this city for a competitive future. I want... Thanks. And I want you to know, over the years, did I have that dry look to my voice, Joe? Okay. Yep. Okay. I want you to know that based on our estimate, if we were to, the governor has yet to sign it, and I'm hoping he will, over the years, it will put 41,000 people to work building exactly the infrastructure to make Chicago the most competitive city in the country economically. And you can't do there if your mass transit system, your airport system, your rail system, your road system, and your water system, and your schools are subpar. And this morning, as you know, Mayor Bloomberg and former Governor Ed Rendell put a report out about America's infrastructure. Our construction workers, people in the building trades, have the highest unemployment of any sector in the country. It's time for an investment in America's future. It's time to rebuild America and make it competitive. As I said, if we're going to spend all the time building resources in Iraq and Afghanistan, schools and roads and bridges, come see our country. Come build America. This will be the most competitive country in the world. You can't envision a city of Chicago without O'Hare and Midway. You can't see a city of Chicago competitively without the rail system, and I'm not just talking about its mass transit for its people, but it's got the biggest intermodal and rail traffic system in the country. We're a city that fundamentals economic future is built by investing in its infrastructure. And that infrastructure creates jobs. It creates economic competitiveness. Companies get built here. Companies get established here. And that's why, working with the sheet metal workers, the Chicago Federation of Labor, we passed a casino bill. I don't want those resources to pay bills. I don't want those resources to pay past bills. I want them to create jobs of the future and a competitiveness that makes sure that the children of the men and women in this room have a future behind it. Now, I don't often talk about national politics, and I don't want to talk about national politics because my focus is on the city. Stronger schools, safer streets, stable finances. Those are my three priorities. But I want you to know every challenge I have is a microcosm of the bigger debate that's going on in Washington. I heard what you had mentioned in the sense of what happened in the negotiations with the president faced. He has an attempt, he's fighting hard on behalf of this country's future, fighting forces that don't want to make compromises, honest compromises for the country's future. And he needs our continued support, and I hope you guys will stand with our president as he tries to build a strong future for this country. It's the President of the United States. If you want to applaud, you can go ahead. Now, what I want you guys to know that I want to end where I began, which is a partnership. There are tough things to do. And I've always said this, I can spend the next 4 years just making cuts. We don't have the money to do this, we don't have the money to do that. That's not how dreams are made. That's not how big plans are built. And we don't have a lot of resources that we had before. And we can't do things that we did before. But that doesn't mean we can't dream, and that doesn't mean we can't build the visions that we had before. But the only way to do that is for the leaders of organized labor to be that partnership. And I know sometimes it's hard for members to hear the changes that people are talking about. I know that makes you in a difficult position. I got that. We're both in that position because change is hard. People are comfortable with where they are, but you can't stand still. And my view is we can show a different vision, a different way of doing things, a progressive way of seeing reform to the public sector. And I cannot think of a better partner to have in seeing that reform through, developing those ideas, and making that a reality than the sheet metal workers around the country, but specifically here in the city of Chicago. So thank you for making Chicago your convention, and thank you for having me.